to you the real raw truth as I and as we evolve. Because, honey, staying the same is not an option. I'm your girl, SantaLí Nicole. On today's episode, we are in real life time, y'all. Everything that's going on in my life, you are done caught up. I've talked about how God has taught me how to love and forgive and keep the faith even after all of the things I've done and all of the things that have happened in my life. And y'all know my business now, so we are in the present moment in real life time, and he's just like, keep going. And I'm just like, okay. So what I learned from this moment forward, we learned from this moment forward, okay? Proverbs 13:12 tells us, hope delayed makes the heart sick, but desired fulfilled is a tree of life. What I feel God really telling me in this moment, and really telling us as people, is to make a decision. Make a decision, make the decision, whatever it is that you need to decide on, to make it. For some of us, that may be our faith. We could be lukewarm, we could be, in the middle of tater-tottering, or, undecisive about if we believe in God or if we don't believe in God, or if God can provide or if he can't provide, or if you can trust him or if you can't trust him, or even in our jobs, our careers, our relationships, whether you want to further them or end them where they're at now. He's telling us, especially me in this time, in this season of my life, to make a decision, because not making a decision will make your heart sick. Not making a decision will keep you wondering if he really loves you. And it's not that he doesn't love you, he just needs you to do something so he can do something through that something. Not to sound repetitive, but it's what it is. When you tell someone to make a decision, it's not as hard as when you tell someone to make the decision, right? Because as people, we are daily making decisions, whether we want to eat this, or we want to wear this, or do we want to brush our teeth, or do we want to talk about this person or give this person our 2 cents. That builds discipline. It builds the habit of having to make a decision. Whereas if you're telling someone to make the decision, there can be a lot of weight behind it, can hold a lot of pressure, and that pressure can affect the person not only emotionally but mentally and physically. When he's telling you to make a decision, some of us will automatically think, well, that's a lot of pressure. Some of us. So with that gift of free will, it can be kind of hard to decide what decision is the right one, and it can also be kind of hard to determine the steps that we need to take in order to make that decision, because we can get kind of foggy in that decision making when those decisions are being rooted in emotion. Jeremiah 17:9 tells us, the heart is more deceitful than anything else and incurable. Who can understand it? When we weigh everything in our hearts, it can get kind of sticky. Yes, our emotions can change and can fluctuate, but they can also be really good indicators when discerned correctly. The emotions that we feel are our bodies indicating to us what it is that it's feeling. They're also a way that God speaks to us. He speaks to us through many different ways, but our main receptor is our body, right? God is always speaking. God is always talking to us. And we just have to be discerned enough to be able to receive it. So the way he showed it to me was that we are power towers. And the signal that we're receiving is, the Holy Spirit speaking to us, to our body, and our spirit receiving it. When we're connected to the right source, or we're tuned into the right frequency, which is God, that's when we receive that unlimited data. Now, it can sound simple when put like that, but when you add emotions into it, because in that vision that he showed me, it wasn't the weather, was the emotions. So the weather is our indicator for determining whether it's going to be a good day or a bad day. Like our emotions, if we're feeling in a good mood or feeling in a bad mood, it can determine whether we're gonna have a good day or we're gonna have a bad day. Now, for me personally, I've had days where I've woken up and I've been just easy breezy able to connect to the spirit, and the worship that I added was a cherry on top, and just talking to God just felt natural. But there were those days where I had to do the extra work, where I had to be in my prayer closet an extra 30 minutes, where I had to worship extra hard, like I was at war with the devil, because he was really attacking the way I was feeling. And if I would go off of the way I was feeling, then my day would be ruined. So like, even if I didn't feel like worshiping, I knew that that was the challenge, because when you don't feel like doing something that's for God, that's when the enemy is really at work, because he's trying to get you to not do something for God, and that only leads to trouble. That only leads to you being stuck in whatever it is that you're feeling. The challenge was really to make sure that I wasn't using what I was feeling or what I feel and throughout the day as a compass, but as an indicator to where I was going to travel. But when we use our emotions as an indicator and not a compass, we're able to discern the paths that we take and build our connection with God stronger, not weaker. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And that was from like a French philosopher. He said that, and it resonates because sometimes in our bodies, when we're around a certain person, we can get a feeling of discomfort or a feeling of tiredness, feeling drained or irritated, and that's usually our spirit indicating to us from inside our body that it's not feeling good being around this person. You're just feeling drained and you haven't even had the conversation, or you feel irritated when you are having the conversation. It can just indicate that either space needs to be put between the two of you, or it's time to find new friends. And it's okay to find new friends. It's okay to change up on who you surround yourself with, because as we grow as humans, everything else around us also grows. Everything else around us also evolves. If someone is trying to say that, you're wrong for changing or you're wrong for growing, that person is not someone you want to surround yourself around. They are closed-minded and keeping you at a standard, at a capacity to which you are no longer in. Sometimes God will remove us from those lives that we lived before, because what he has in store for us and what's ahead of us in our future cannot be supported with the lives that we are living or the lives that we did live. Most decisions people make may or may not involve other people, and if they do, sometimes those people can be directly affected or not. Nevertheless, we are people, and we are people who suffer with a sense of pride, and sometimes that pride has a spirit of entitlement that lays dormant in it. When faced with a situation like this, you're led to make the decision, you or them. That decision-making process, we can sometimes affect somebody or hurt somebody, even if that wasn't our intention to begin with. When it comes to making a decision on the safety of my life, it's going to be me. Always and forever is going to be me. That's not negating whether I love you or not, because I can still love you. But if you are physically, emotionally, mentally, or even spiritually harming me, you're putting me in a danger zone that's not only going to affect me, but it's going to affect you. I talked about this, that hurt people can result in an angry person, and hurt person can hurt people. So even if it comes to the decision of just my life in general, I'm still going to choose me. Most people will look at me like, how selfish of you, Santa. But if you feel that entitled and you want to think of it like that, then go right ahead. But don't put me in that box too. Everything I do out of love. If I'm not loving myself and working to be my bestest version, how can you trust that I'll be able to show up for you on some real? Matthew 12:34 tells us, for the mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart. And just a few verses later, Matthew 12:37, he says, for by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. This is why I believe God has been working on the unforgiveness in me, because the unforgiveness has really been towards myself more than anyone else. I was the biggest people pleaser I knew, and I was not ashamed about it. But on the flip side, I would feel ashamed about it because of how drained and how ineffective I was really being. I really thank God for giving me wisdom and knowledge in how to love someone and still put yourself first. which is basically having boundaries put up. And the understanding that being unforgiving was keeping me back from serving others. Forgiveness was really the freedom I needed to shift my mentality of how I could be more suitable for the role of a wife and not have to overextend myself, or even being worthy of being an entrepreneur regardless of my failures, because experience comes from failing, right? And so I had to make that decision that I wasn't going to be afraid anymore. So God was telling me the first decision I really needed to make was in either believing in him or the lies, and I needed to know the difference from the lies and the truth, and if I'm going to trust him, if I'm going to believe him or not, and not sway in it, right? Be anchored in it, because a lot of the times, I'll admit, there will be something that just seems so heavy and so big that it's just like, ooh, this doesn't look good. But I have to remember that the earth is God's footstool and the heavens is where he rules. So anything that is in the earth is not too big, it's not too powerful for God to handle it. It's not impossible, it's not difficult. He got it. So I needed to make the decision whether I was going to fight for God's will or fight against the enemy's lies. Now, that's the enemy's assignment, is to get us to lose our faith. So in making that decision, God has really just been telling me, and maybe he's telling you this, to be more discerned about who we surround ourselves with, because they say you are who you surround yourselves with. And if you're around people who continuously tell themselves that they're broke, then you're going to think that you're broke. Or if you're around 6 millionaires, you will be the 7th millionaire. And he's been leaning me towards growing a sensitivity to who I call on as a friend or family, because yes, blood is thicker than water, but they're both slippery. So he's been guiding me to choose people who will pray for me rather than prey on me. And the difference is P-R-A-Y versus P-R-E-Y. People that prey on you, or people that talk bad about you when you're not in the room, or talk on your downfall and just really have nothing nice to say about you, or even when you are doing good, they're just hoping that you trip up or that you slip up and fail in whatever it is that you're attempting to succeed in. People that will pray for you are, when you pop into their mind, they're quick to pray for you to God. You know, God, make their crooked path straight, light their path. Lord, lead them to good and discernment, and just always have something good to say about you, whether you're in the room or you're not in the room. We all have our stories of how someone hasn't had our back, and we as individuals also need to start taking responsibilities for the roles that we play in those relationships, or in those partnerships, or even in those friendships, because it takes two to tango. And with this new insight on who is praying for you and not praying on you, you're also creating more of a safe environment to make this decision, or even in this decision-making process. If you know enough, especially of yourself, you know that you are not able to make good decisions in a high stress environment. You aren't able to make a good decision that will lead you in the right way because you're making it on survival mode. But if you're at peace and you're at rest, you're able to put one and one together and make two. And that's when the decision starts to flow. That's when things start to be restored and renewed, and speed starts to show itself. These friends or these family members that you're calling on, you're calling so that they can support you with prayer and whatever else you may need. But if you've already made the decision, then you're calling them to pray and on that decision and help you, grow faith and discernment and gratitude that God has already answered the prayer for you. If I can give you any piece of advice for today, is to remember that even if you don't think you have a friend, you always have a friend, and his name is the Holy Spirit. He's always with you. He always hears you. He knows what you're going through. He knows what's inside of you. Even if you don't know what's inside of you, all you have to do is just talk to him. So if you need someone to pray for you, and there's people around you that are unreliable or just not at the place that you need as far as faith, then go to the Holy Spirit, because he's full of faith. He's literally God himself, and he is always looking for you to come to him anyways. And y'all are for lifers. He's literally your life buddy. If you do have that community that you're able to call people that can pray for you and not pray on you, keep those people around. Pray for them. Make sure you're not only going to them when you need something, but that you are always there, and make yourself available for them to come to you, and make yourself available to always be there for them when they need something, because there's a war going on, whether we want to acknowledge it as a whole or not. There is a war going on, and if you aren't able to acknowledge it, that just shows where you are in this war. Okay, so just take time to look within. And I'm not talking about all that shadow work, all that new age, because that's hella demonic. I'm not even gonna trip with you. It's very demonic, and we need to lean up off that. But just call on Jesus for real. Like, he's the real one for real. And people downplay him, but he died for you. He loves you, and he just wants the best for you, always and forever. Never doubting you like other people. And stop comparing God to people, please. That's not only a reminder for y'all, but that's a reminder for me too. Okay, these people are going to disappoint you, but he will never disappoint you. He's perfect. He can't disappoint. He literally can't. He never gets tired. He never gets faint. He's literally perfect. Okay, all right, y'all, it's been a real one. It's been a real one, but I'm glad you came back, and I'm glad you subscribed, and I'm glad you liked, and I'm glad you loved it. I will see you guys next time on Godly Woman with a Purpose.
Feel like you did it for me. It's the way your love feels. It's the way that I hear all of creation singing with me. The fruit grows and knows when to let go, and it's time again for a new season. I feel like you did it for me, yeah. And everything around you changed, and things came to life. And it's crazy to think in the midst of it all, you already knew my name. And the more that I see you, the more I'm in awe. Let's fly across the sunset sky.